Hey guys, thanks for joining me this afternoon. I have the one and only Christie Knieriem of Christie's Reptile Room, who I have known for, probably about 5 years now. And my knowledge of Christie has primarily revolved around the Europlatus group, which her and I are both very, very interested in. But Christie happens to be an avid fan and breeder of the one and only Crested Gecko. So for Crested Gecko month, I felt like who else should we have on to talk about the many different morphs that you're going to find in the Crested Gecko world other than the one and only Christie. So Christie, why don't you take a second to introduce yourself?
Christie, I've been working. Hi, I'm with Crested Geckos for about 12 years now. They were my introductory species, and I've never fallen out of love with them. They're easy to keep, they're fun, they're personable. I will always have them in my collection, no matter what other species I delve into. So it's something I'm really excited to talk about, actually.
Yeah, and I remember when we were last talking about Fantasticus geckos, you brought that up, that you will always have crested geckos, and not just a few, but many, because you love them that much.
Yeah, I probably have right now, because I tend to keep my animals for quite a while to grow them out. I have pretty much all the offspring I produced from the last season still here in my home, so I probably have around 200 crested geckos right now. And I enjoy them. They're fun to keep for me, and like I said, it's something that I'll always have.
Well, you have more crested geckos than I personally have animals in total combined across all the different species that I keep. So that's pretty incredible. And for those of you who are interested, Christie Knieriem, you can find her on Instagram at Christie's Reptile Room. Christie, are you on Facebook as well?
I am. So I will freely admit I am absolutely terrible about updating my social media accounts. So you won't see a lot of new animals posted or anything. However, I'm always contactable to show you what I have available, or what I have as far as my collection. I just really am bad at social media. So
yeah, and I think that
Christie's.
Yep, sorry. That presents a good point, which is that when you are really good at what you do, sometimes you just don't need it advertised. And Christie just said she has 200 animals that she's in her collection, holding back from the last season. Needless to say, I'm assuming when this season's animals start hatching, she will be able to move those animals. And that is a real testament to what you have been able to accomplish in terms of networking and also, I assume, building quality animals. For me, that is the most exciting part, but transitioning that into a reliable business or even just a reliable hobby that you have enough animals every year to breed, that's an art, and some people really have it, and Christie's one of them. So with that said, I want to hear your expert opinion on the world of crested gecko morphs. How many are there?
Oh my goodness. So here's a really, really big problem in our hobby currently, is there's a big difference between traits and morphs. So morphs, when people think of morphs when they're working with other species, ball pythons, leopard geckos, all these animals that have fairly predictable genetics. We know this is recessive, this is dominant, this is co-dominant. There are so many traits involved with crested that are none of those things. You can't reliably reproduce them. It is purely a matter of putting two animals together to have traits that you like, to try to further those traits. It's only been in very recent years that we have actual genetic morphs involved in the hobby. So we're only starting to see things like the lily white gene, which is a co-dominant, which is an incomplete dominant gene.
Okay.
We have xanthic, which is definitely recessive. So even more recently, we have the cappuccinos, frappuccinos. It's a really, really sable, really deep hole we get into. So much of what people talk about when they think about morphs with crested.
Okay.
Pinstripes, for example. So I actually have a fantastic example of a pinstripe here. She
Oh, good.
is a beautiful striped white wall gecko. So she is an animal I produced myself on a breeder loan with a very, very good friend of mine. She's also a very large beast of a crested. So, so the pinstripe trait, let's see if she will cooperate and face the right direction. They tend to have personalities and vices.
I feel like getting a gecko to look the right direction is impossible.
Yes. So you see along her body, she has raised scales all the way down one side here.
Yeah.
So all of those are highlighted.
Yeah. Crested geckos be jumping.
Crested geckos are arboreal. The thing they want to do more is jump onto other things.
Yeah.
But so these raised scales and everything, every single one is highlighted. So she is considered a pinstripe. Every single one is a white one.
Okay.
She's a full pinstripe. It's down both sides. And then she also has the white wall trait. So you see along her dorsal line, or sorry, she's being a jerk, her lateral line, she has a full white lower lat section.
Yeah,
so
all the way.
Yep. So she is a full pinstripe with white walling. She is actually an amazing gecko. She produces amazing offspring. But both of these things are traits. They are not morphs. So these are things, if I were to put her with another pinstripe, there'd be a high chance we'd get a good number of full pinstripes out of them. Sincerely, because it's not an inheritable gene the same way a recessive gene is.
So this is something like, if we're gonna make an analysis, this is different than analogy to humans. Blue eyes versus brown eyes, or brown hair versus blonde hair. This is more like, how tall am I gonna be?
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
So it's a trait. You're likely to have it. Your parents have that gene. You're likely to show it, but it's not a certainty.
Exactly. So that's why you compare two absolutely beautiful crested geckos together and still get some offspring that you're like, I don't know where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it a little more complicated when breeding comes in. But that is, to me, why it makes it more valuable when you have geckos that produce consistent traits. So this particular girl, she does throw a lot of the white wall traits. That's part of why she's part of my breeding program, is because that is a desirable trait. It's beautiful. She passes it on. So we're just, to me, for a second, crested geckos are a little unpredictable here. So
yeah, they do make wonderful pets, but as far as wonderful handling pets, they're not a leopard gecko. Let's not forget.
Totally depends on the animal. I have one I actually refer to as a potato because you take her out and put her on your hand, and she goes, cool. However, there's a whole lot more that are like, I'm going to jump to the highest point because I'm arboreal and that's what I do.
Yeah, always looking for the next place to be.
So we go from that to this gecko here has the very inheritable, incomplete dominant gene that they refer to as lily white.
Okay, so I've heard of lily white.
Particularly nice one. I don't know how well you can see her.
Oh, yeah.
But she's got absolutely fantastic white. There are certain markers in the genetic that causes thicker lateral lines. Their scale structure actually literally affects scales. So as babies are hatched out, you can tell whether they carry the gene or not purely by the thickness of the scale line and certain genetic markers that you can see on them, which is very hard to explain all of them. You kind of develop a practice eye because sometimes there are low quality lily whites that are a little hard to distinguish, but as they grow, you can still see the thickening in the scales in the lateral line. So this one is also what's called a tricolor.
That was my next question. Yeah, she's almost calico.
Yes, exactly, which is why she's very near and dear to my heart. So she has the dark base, and then she has the bright yellow, and then also the white patterning as well. So tricolor is a very classic thing that you can find in normal genetics as well. It exists well outside of the lily white gene.
So is lily white a dominant or a recessive gene?
It's actually codom.
Okay.
So another interesting thing about them is if you breed a lily white to lily white, it is a fatal genetic. The offspring will not survive.
Whoa.
That's something people want to do. Many people keep trying it and keep going, no, I'll be the one who could. Nope. Fatal every time.
So you have to breed lily whites out.
Yep. So it has to be lily white to a gecko that doesn't have it. So, however, if you pair a lily white to a normal, and the baby does not show the lily white gene, it's not a carrier.
Okay. So it just does not have it whatsoever.
Exactly. It's either visual or it's not there at all. So that is another thing that has been really interesting with working with this gene, is also why I think it's super important. So in the beginning, whenever a gene like this comes out, people are like, I'm going to breed it to anything and everything. Unfortunately, geckos that are not, unfortunately, that means that if you're breeding them to a high quality animal, the ones that are not lily whites will frequently not be a very high quality pattern, color, or desirable. So you are in essence producing animals that are pet quality at best. So that's part of why it's important to me in my breeding program, is when I have a lily white, which I only have a couple of, I breed them with animals that are also exceptional, so that the offspring that are not lily white are still also really nice animals.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that you're getting a larger number of the offspring, whether they're lily white or not, is going to be of a desirable trait.
Exactly. So that's something that's very important to me. I don't have a large collection. You would think 200 is a lot, but it's actually not in the grand scheme of crested geckos.
Oh yeah, I've heard of people with tens of thousands.
Yeah. So for me, it's so important for me to keep only animals that I truly feel good about in my collection. So the lily white gene, like I said, is one of the few actual inheritable traits or genes that we know for sure are morphs. I don't have any of the xanthics, which is again a recessive gene, and they have been mixed with lily whites to some really incredible results. That's something that absolutely people, if you Google it, you can find pictures of some of the most unique animals. There are also some very interesting claims about some other genetics that are coming in and out that people are still researching, so I won't speak much on those, just simply because I don't have a lot of knowledge of them, and even the people working with them now are still completely figuring out exactly all the things that are possible with those genes.
Yeah, what does it mean in terms of, like we learned with lily whites, you know, if you breed two together, or if you breed one with a different morph that perhaps the genes don't work, or maybe, you know, health-wise or even pattern-wise.
Yes, and so that's actually an interesting point. So with the cappuccinos, what we're seeing now is that the superform, I might be mistaken in the verbiage here, I can't remember if cappuccinos or frappuccinos is a superform, but one of them, whatever the superform is, they're actually being born with a tiny little nostril, or the nostril completely covered over entirely.
Oh my gosh.
So, right, so then you get into issues and ethics here.
Yeah, that's a serious ethical issue.
Yes. Do you keep breeding it because it's new and interesting? Or do you stop because you're saying, okay, here's a ramification that is not good for the future of the species? Yep. Really, really big, complicated issue, and very ongoing. This is one of the things you'll see most commonly in arguments about the genetics on Crested currently in this time.
So if you had to take a guess, how many actual genetic morphs would you say there are versus how many traits exist?
So what I know for sure, as far as, again, this is just my knowledge. For genetic morphs, I know about xanthic, I know about lily white, the cappuccino, frappuccino, as well as there's another gene, the sable gene. Those are all the ones I know of for sure that exist. I don't know if there are others. I'm sure people have others hiding in their collections. Also, I would love to see them if you have them. But as far as traits go, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many.
Yeah, they're all different.
They're all different, and they're also very subjective. So you'll see somebody who says, this is a Harlequin. Else will say Harlequin. Someone, that's a Harlequin partial pinstripe. That's an extreme Harlequin. This is why I tend not to always label my traits.
Sure, yeah.
no matter what I say it is, there's going to be 10 people who say, no, it's that.
Yeah, it's not like we have a pedigree system for showing crested geckos, and who
Right.
knows, in 20 years or longer or maybe shorter we will, but I doubt it. And for now, it's really relying on popular naming convention, which with social media is all over the place because everyone wants to name them something cool. And hey, I respect it. I understand being a Fantasticus keeper and breeder, the same thing exists. And I would say with Fantasticus, there's absolutely no genetic morphs. Yeah, it's just traits. Don't be ashamed to pay less for a pet gecko. And hey, look, if you like spending big money and you want a fancy crested gecko, do it. Do what makes you happy.
That's exactly how I feel about it. And if you're a breeder, you're going to be looking for very specific traits and qualities to further your own projects too. So don't be afraid to approach breeders to say, hey, I'm looking for this very specific thing. If they don't have it, they're going to tell you. If they're rude, you walk away. But sometimes you find something that is exactly what you're looking for to complete your project. And it can be worth the money to spend on it if it's exactly what you need to make your project be what you want it to be.
Oh, I know that one from the Fantasticus geckos as well. Not to always go back to those geckos, but it's my frame of reference. Hey, guys, I don't keep crested geckos personally. I'll be completely honest about it, and that's why we have experts like Christie here. But it makes absolute sense.
You want that lichen covered?
I need the lichen covered. They're totally missing from my collection.
But that's exactly how it goes forward, is you look for those specific things. And when you find it, sometimes even if market value doesn't necessarily dictate the price, your own personal goals and what you're looking for and what you're willing to spend is worth it to go a little over, because it's only going to build your collection and make what you're working with better.
I wouldn't be surprised if the big spenders in the world of crested geckos are the breeders themselves.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. The vast majority of people who are not breeders are looking for pet quality. That's not to say I haven't had somebody come up to my table at a show and say, I fell in love with this animal, it's only going to be a pet, it's $800, that's fine. But majority of the high spenders are going to be people who are looking to improve their own projects or to add something that's missing from their projects. So they're going to be looking at those animals and like, yeah, that's fine, because this is what is going to make my project what I want it to be.
That's great. Well, with that said, we're going to go ahead and conclude tonight. And for all of our viewers out there, thanks. I hope you're enjoying Crested Gecko Month as much as I am. And we've got more content coming to you soon. Don't forget to look up Christie Knieriem at Christie's Reptile Room. If you don't see what you want on her Instagram, like she said, she's responsive. She's not necessarily posting. So send her a message.
Exactly, do. Just get a hold of me. I'm always happy to talk. I'm also happy to answer questions for people who are new to the hobby, who are just looking for some information on their animals. So don't be afraid to reach out to me. As far as I'm concerned, the people who have been in the hobby for a while, it's kind of our responsibility to help the people who are newer to the hobby. So do not be afraid to reach out with me with questions that you might have.
Take it from me, guys. That is a very kind and very generous offer. Everybody, thanks very much for joining us, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.